1967. At NASA in Houston, he then worked on the Apollo-Soyuz Space Shuttle, Space Station, Mars Rover sample return, and Moon-Mars exploration programs in positions ranging from engineer to program manager. At NASA headquarters in Washington, he was assistant administrator for space exploration and then architect of the NASA strategic plan. He's been director of the Stennis Space Center and associate director of the Johnson Space Center. Mark is now an advisor on space exploration to museums and themed attractions here and abroad. He earned his bachelor's in astronautical engineering from Purdue in 1971, pursued engineering postgraduate study at Rice, and completed MIT's Sloan Program for Senior Executives. He's authored over 30 papers on space exploration and has received numerous awards, including the NASA Distinguished Service and Outstanding Leadership Medals and the Federal Engineer of the Year Award. He is a fellow of the American Astronautical Society, a distinguished engineering alumnus of Purdue, a member of the MHS Hall of Honor. Mark was elected to the International Academy of Astronautics in 1992 and is past president of the American Astronautical Society. He's a member of the National Eagle Scout Association and the College Art Association, and we're very lucky to have him here today speaking on NASA 3.0, letting us know where NASA goes next. So,
always good to be on. I was very pleased to be invited to speak here, especially in Midland, because Midland for me is where all this began. And I hope I can convey to you some of the tendencies between space exploration and Midland, and the spirit of Midland and what Midland does. Really? Yeah. So if I eat it. Is that better? Okay. Thanks, Andrew. I decided when Andrew invited me to speak in this great series that you all have here, I thought maybe talking about what's happening in NASA today from a personal perspective might be useful. Of the challenge facing America to send an American to the moon and bring it back safely within the decade of the 60s. That statement was made in Rice Stadium in Houston, Texas, for good reason. That then presaged a very strenuous effort on the part of the American aeronautics, space industry, industrial base, and government base, which resulted in the next one, Andrew, a number of things blowing up. I know for those of you that lived through that time, you may remember rockets are basically big bombs. It takes a lot of energy to get into Earth orbit, a lot. And containing that energy and having it extracted in a controlled way so you go someplace is not simple. And the first days in the space program, where these kind of images were seen often, I think really set the hook in that, help people understand that. Okay. Ultimately, we did prevail, though. We were successful as a nation and landed 3 astronauts on the moon in July of 1969. Just kind of looking at the cultural dimension of this, and it goes on today. A lot of space things back in the 50s and continued on in science fiction were around the evil aliens from the planet Mongo invade Earth and eat people. You know, that kind of stuff. There also was kind of the sub-vein of scientists gone mad was a subtext to a lot of things. And especially, of course, in the nuclear arms race, with nuclear tests going on, giant monsters, nature bringing these giant monsters forth that were a problem for humanity. And then, of course, we have those things today, too. But with Star Trek, I think there was a different ethos brought forward in our culture. This 0.0, I think, and it began clearly with competition, beat the bad guys. NASA 2.0 is almost the obverse of that, building on the capabilities in both Russia and the U.S. for various reasons. Both countries decided that it would be very beneficial to work together, not against each other. So that, using again a remnant of the Apollo system, President Nixon initiated a thing called the Apollo-Soyuz test project, where we, with 3 astronauts, docked with a Soyuz spacecraft from, at that time, the Soviet Union, and had a joint mission. That's when 2 space cultures began to come together. To me, if you don't know why you're doing something, you're not going to do it very well. And engineers and scientists, because we are so passionate about the technical things we build, we think that is why. but it's not at all, not even close. The nation has to decide why. And for so many years, we didn't get to the why, we got to the where. You know, the Mars versus the moon guys. I lived through that for 25 years. Again, you can't sort that out. Do you go to Mars? Do you go to the moon? What do you do there? Unless you know why you're going. Really important. In water, that Mars also was covered with oceans, had a very warm atmosphere. Not unlike the atmosphere on Earth at that time. Life began here. Could it have there? That is one of the main themes of Mars exploration is follow the water, and it's follow the water so you can see if there's life. Fossil life, I think, primarily. But that is a deep, deep theme. I talked about how that image of Earth changed us as human beings. I think we find life or evidence that life existed somewhere else, so that will change us as human beings in ways I can't even imagine. But for the better. I mean, it helps. Please keep paying attention to this. Hopefully be encouraged by what's happening against the larger framework here.
I want to thank everyone for coming out too. We really appreciate it. And don't forget that tonight we'll also have the telescopes out in the park behind the planetarium so that you can come out and get a look through telescopes as well. We'll be looking at the moon, we'll be looking at Mars, Saturn, probably a little bit of Venus before it sets down too far. You can get to see it as a nice little crescent out there and just be able to see a whole...
Thank you, Steve. I know that.